Dr. Elliot Justin, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining me today. For our followers and listeners, Dr. Elliot Justin, he's the CEO and founder of FirmTech, the first sex tech education company. And their main focus is on improving men's erectile fitness, and we will be getting more into that. Dr. Justin has a background in emergency medicine. Of course, he knows a lot about men's sexual health and hormones. And we're going to jump into it all now and hopefully bring you guys a really educational, insightful conversation around men's health and hormones. Dr. Elliot, I'm kind of flipping the table, as I mentioned to you before. I've been focusing a lot on female hormones lately, and now I want to give the men a little bit of the limelight with your help.
Sure, but let's at some point circle back to testosterone replacement therapy for postmenopausal women.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, well, let's get into it. Let's start off first, like the big question. And we're specifically looking at men, but of course, this is relevant to women too. How important is sex?
Sex is critically important. I'll give you 3 examples. We all complain about living in a very stressful world. Well, we know that people who have sex every day, which I recommend because I think an orgasm a day keeps the doctor away. People who have sex every day could decrease for a month, decrease the cortisol level, the stress hormone, by up to 50%. And everyone in the study group increased, but it's up to 50%. There's a big study out of the United Kingdom several years ago showing that men over the age of 70 who had sex twice a week versus twice a month cut their risk of cardiovascular death by 50%. Now, you're gonna die anyway, but that's quite significant. And then there's separation and divorce. There are studies this is from around the world, multiple different cultures, that couples that have sex 2 to 4 times a week versus twice a month have half the divorce or separation rate. So we're all very concerned about the family unit in the United States and Canada and around the world. And we know, yes, single parenting, there are many successful examples, but single parenting is damn hard. And we know that if the children of couples that stay united are more likely to have higher success in school. They're more likely to get involved with drugs or significantly involved with drugs or alcohol. They're more likely to go to jail. So here's a measure that is imagine this government program, if you will, Chemaines. Imagine if you're a new prime minister, at least we hope you get a new prime minister, or President Trump, heck, or the Pope. If they just said, we think that everyone should have sex. We advocate that every couple in our country or the world should have sex 2 to 4 times a week because we know that this will make people happier, improve their cardiovascular health, improve their immune system. The benefits of regular sex to pretty much every system of the body are significant.
But why? How does this work? So with my female clients especially, I encourage them to, if they can't have intercourse, at least try to orgasm regularly for the oxytocin, the stress response. Like, it's really strong in women, as I'm sure you know, when they actually do it. So when I'm considering women, I'm thinking, again, this big stress response. So how and why is that working in men's health, though?
It's the same in men's health. So one of the things, and I got involved with FirmTech because about 3 years ago, a urology professor at the University of Utah told me he wanted to come up with a way of counting the number of nocturnal erections that men have because they're a leading indicator of their cardiovascular health. And my response was, really? What the fuck are you talking to me? Really? What are you talking about? We all know about morning wood. We laugh about it, but I never heard that nocturnal erections are significant. Well, there are about 10, 12 papers in the urology literature showing that the penis is basically the canary in the coal mine of cardiovascular disease. So in medicine, when we say leading indicator, that's very different than association. We treat associations in medicine. High blood pressure is associated with stroke or heart attack. High low proteins is associated with angina and heart attacks. But they're associated. They're not predictive. When we say leading indicator in medicine, we mean it's predictive. So if a man goes from 5 nocturnal erections down to 2 or from 3 to 0, That man has a 50% chance of having a heart attack in the next 2 years. Well, that blew me away, and that's why I got involved in this area. My assumption, and the assumption of many doctors, is that the same thing is true for women. Women have nocturnal erections. Chemaine, I'd ask you how many you had, but you might think I'm being fresh last time.
My
But
husband might be listening.
but then we have no women. We have again with our device, the tech ring, we now have a way of measuring them. And we've had two men get I know of get we've documented 56,000 erections. We're the biggest
That's a lot of erections.
database that anyone in the world has. I mean,
Mm.
and current understanding of men's sexual health has been based upon like 250, 300 erection studies done back in the 90s with this device called a radioscan that looks like some Dr. Frankenstein put on the testicles. So we now have our device at home in privacy. So we're learning a lot about, there's a lot of the conventional wisdom about men's sexual health that's beginning to change. Same thing with women. We come up with a women device. But getting back to cardiovascular disease, we need to men's nocturnal erections, their duration, their firmness, their number is a leading indicator. This is really profound, and so it's really important. I'm confident the next 2 to 4 years, what we're doing will become the standard of care. Certainly for all men over the age of 45, 50, or men who have diabetes or hypertension, they will want to know what their erectile fitness score is. And I'll get to that in just one second. And the same thing is going to be true with women. And women have even more issues than men. Why? Because we doctors fuck them up.
And
Why?
our hormones are insane.
Well, let's talk about premenopausal women, because postmenopausal women, I'll go to in a moment. Premenopausal women take hormones of birth control. Men don't. Premenopausal women take, in the United States, 4 to 6 times as many SSRI antidepressants, which is a click killer.
Yeah.
As men do for depression and anxiety. Probably over medicated, probably a really bad drug. I'm not in favor of it. Well, if women could measure the health of the clitoris, which they can't right now, they would be able to say, well, what's the right dose of hormone for me or antidepressant? And maybe I don't want to take these things at all because look at the impact upon my sexual health. My sexual health is impacting my relationships and my own personal happiness.
I've learned a lot from you from listening to your conversations over the last while. And just going back to that canary in the coal mine, when I heard you first say that, that blew me away. So, again, for those of you that missed it, Dr. Justin basically said the penis is the canary in the coal mine, which I think is going to be the name of this podcast. um, and when we look at women's health, not to harp on about women, we generally look at the menstrual cycle as an indicator of health, but nobody thinks to look at the penis as an indicator of men's current and future health.
And the impact of medications that they're taking. Because again, we doctors are doing the wrong thing on many levels. We put men on antihypertensives, antidepressants, prostate flow medications that significantly disrupt their sexual health. And we doctors never ask, United States or Canada, it's really unusual. I'm talking about the non-concierge world, the world that most people experience, going to their regular insurance covered GP or family doctor or internist. They don't ask about sexual health. They don't ask whether a man's problem is whether you. Here's a key question, and women need to think about this question if they have a man who has trouble. Is my man's problem that he can't attain an erection? That guy has a big problem. If he can't attain an erection, it's probably and if you're using our device, if you can't attain an erection, he has poor nocturnal erections. That man has a significant cardiovascular problem. He needs to see a cardiologist, not
That
just.
is scary. Most people that follow me at very least have never heard of that before. And on top of that, most people have never heard of nocturnal erections
That's
either.
right.
Well,
So
isn't
now
that crazy that we're so
let's
naive in the world of our own health?
I didn't even know about it, and I'm a doctor. I didn't know about this 3 years ago. So now, if a man can't attain an erection and he has nocturnal erections, it's a relationship issue. Well, that's really informative to a couple. If a couple, and I'll tell you that we've had 2 divorces that I know from people using our device because the men who want to blame their wives for poor performance in bed, well, they might be able to perform quite well with someone else, So We've had two guys who didn't password protect their data, and
Yeah.
their wives discovered. And you know what? These guys were abusive to their wives, and they deserve to fucking be divorced.
Mm.
But on the other side, most men's problem is not they can't attain erection. It's that they get an erection, but they can't sustain it.
Why
And
is that? Because that was one of the questions from
that's
one of my
multifactorial. It's
followers.
been really interesting. So, and it can range from performance anxiety, lack of confidence, and we'll get to those two in 1 second. And there's also diabetes, hypertension, medications, alcohol, recreational drugs. There are other things that can do it. But if you have data, you can start to figure it out.
Mm.
But most men's problem is venous leak. And so therapists often, in my opinion, sometimes do a disservice to people because what therapists don't know about the physiology of sex either. Therapists think, oh, it's a communication problem in a relationship. Well, every man and every woman gets venous leak. So what do I mean by venous leak? Every erection, penile or clitoral, ends with blood leaving the clitoris of the penis. It's leaking from the veins. Now, Chemaine, I'll pick on you for a moment. You're an attractive lady, and probably if I was 14 years old and you were 14 years old, I probably could hold your hand and get an erection. I'm old now, though, and you're old too, not as old as me. But that doesn't happen to me. I love my wife. I've been married for 37 years, and we try to make love pretty much every day.
Mm.
But I don't, get erections from holding hands, kissing anymore. It's just the way we get old. Now there are lots of factors. Part of it's mental. Part of it is venous leak, though. So if I sat on a plane for 5 or 6 hours, my socks get a little bit tight and my rings get a little bit tight. Yours probably do too.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? Because women, this is more common in men than women and men because women have weaker smooth muscle, not smooth muscle around their veins.
Mm-hmm.
So as we get older, the smooth muscle gets weaker and the veins get a little bit stiffer. And as a consequence, we get swelling. Blood leaks from our veins into the interstitial space. Well, in the penis of the clitoris, men lose their erections. We get turned on, and then we lose it. And the answer is a mechanical solution. It's a cock ring. Women have vibrators. For as much as women often appropriately complain about lack of attention to them, women have vibrators. So aside from the neurological pleasure and stimulation of vibrators, there's also the vibratory benefit. The vibrations stimulate blood flow.
Yeah.
So women don't have the issue with venous leak in the clitoris as much as men do from their penis. Guys don't want to talk about this. Guys don't know about cock rings, straight guys. 90% of straight gay guys use cock rings, 10% straight guys do. Cock rings are these hard silicone rings. They pinch, they're uncomfortable, unlike vibrators. They haven't been changed. The essential manufacturing form hasn't been changed for 150 years. In order to come up with a cock ring that had embedded sensors into it that could be worn overnight to count nocturnal erections, we had to reinvent the cock ring. We had to make a cock ring that was made out of elastomer rather than silicone. Why is that? Because silicone is an irritating material to the skin. It makes us adapt to it. Women understand this, men don't. Whereas elastomers adapt to us. So I would guesstimate the idea for, here's the ring actually on our vibrator. Let me take it off.
I hope that's not the one you and your wife use.
Why not? No. It's my desk demo model. It could be used.
So would this leak also be a consideration in the middle of intimacy and intercourse where 1 minute a man is hard, then he's soft, but then he struggles to get hard again, and we're chasing our tail almost?
Right, because a man who's worried about losing erection or has lost his erection it's gonna stay that way, more likely than not. So in order to come up with our ring is different. Our ring allows the arterial blood in, so it's more comfortable. It can be worn for hours. So why do I now have sex with a ring all the time when I don't need a ring? I can have sex without a ring. Why? Because it's a profound confidence builder for me and for my wife. Why? Because I'm old, I lose my erections. And there are certain things in relationships, 3 things that guys don't want to discuss. 1, my wife has had three children, and my wife doesn't mind my discussing this. An example, she's had 3 children and she's 70 years old. I just don't get friction in certain positions. So I'm going to lose my erection. So, and I've been talking to our customers, male and some female, this is really complex. And because no guy wants to tell his wife, your pussy's too loose and I just can't feel anything. That's kind of a buzzkill in bed, right?
Yeah, and
So,
you'd probably get a slap.
right. But a ring fixes that, because once you attain an erection, you put the ring on, you put the ring on beforehand, but the ring is there. My wife knows I'm going to stay hard for 45, 50 minutes.
Mm.
Well, we no longer have this sort of rush to orgasm. Oh, we're both turned on, get the vibrator, favorite position. What are we going to do? Blah, blah. She knows that it's much more relaxed. There's more kissing, there's more touch, there's more foreplay, there's more oral sex. There's much more. It's much more relaxed with the ring on. And there we designed one ring we call the maximum performance ring to achieve two things. One, we want to keep men comfortably hard for long periods of time. Two, we want to intensify the male orgasm. So we do that by putting pressure over the urethra with the goal of increasing the ejaculatory phase by 50%. And it's not as good as a vibrator, but it's a much better orgasm. Most guys, we start wanking when we're like 11 or 12 years old, and we think we're a connoisseur of our orgasms. But with the ring, I wouldn't have sex out because my pleasure is greater. I know I'm going to last longer. My wife is no longer worrying about me. She can focus on her own pleasure. I can focus on her pleasure as well too, because of the ring. And she knows that I'm going to have a particularly intense orgasm afterwards, and she loves me, and of course she wants that, from me as well. So my advice to couples is put a ring on it. There are other things that men complain about. One is boredom. That's a buzz killer as well too. I'm married 37 years. There are certain positions that my wife likes that simply don't work for me. And a couple of years ago, I would have gotten irritated because I'm a guy. If she said she wanted to have what is she like after she has an orgasm? She likes to turn over and have me have sex with her from behind. And I hope it's not too graphic for your audience, but this is real common. You're a representative of millions of people.
Yeah.
She likes, and she turns over and she gets into her love space, basically. It's an intimacy space. Before she had our second child, I got off on that. Now it's decades later, and the things are looser. I don't get off on it, and until I came up with a ring, I would get irritated because, hey, you want me to do something. I'm going to lose my erection in a few minutes. Guys don't want to, and most guys won't even say that. They're afraid to say that. They just keep on trying and then fail. And when people fail, eventually they kind of give up.
Yeah.
But the other complaint that men have is women, might not be you, but many women, even when they're really turned on, can talk about something else if they're in a relationship where there's trust. It could be something going on with the kids, something at work, something with their mother. I'm in business with my wife. She comes up with design ideas for the company, for our creative content while we're fucking. Well, that's great. But
can you wait for a few minutes?
Because sometimes you can't hold that thought. When we came up with a form for the ring a couple of years ago, it was winter in Montana, and we're having sex, and my wife suddenly remembered that she left the garage door open. It was snowing. It was like 10 degrees out. Now,
you have to admire us, though, that we can think of all of these things at once.
Yes, I do, frankly. And I think the clitoris is superior to the penis for reasons that we can discuss if you want. But my wife suddenly said, remember, the garage door's open. Now, there's no culture in the world, not where the woman's going to jump up and say, oh, I left the garage door open. I'll go downstairs and I'll close the garage door. That's just not the way it works. So I got up and I was already a little bit irritated. And I went downstairs. The garage door was open, as was a car door. And as I'm coming back up the stairs, she said, get me some tequila with a lime and some ice. Now, I'm a guy and I'm married many years. My reaction without the cock ring would have been, what the fuck? Get your own fucking tequila. We're not having sex tonight. I'm grumpy. I'm going to bed. But I come upstairs, and because I have a ring on, I'm still hard. Well, a guy who's still hard thinks it's a very different mood than a guy who's lost his erection because of whatever. And we've heard about this lots. I call them patients, but they're really my customers. We hear about this from lots of guys. A cock ring, a comfortable, easy on, easy off cock ring, which is what we designed, that intensifies pleasure, increases confidence. It's just a game changer for men and women, or two gay men for that matter.
Let's come back to that because I did want to just kind of go into a few more things in regards to erection and men's health. And I have a few questions, as I mentioned. I suppose we've spoke about the importance of sex. So the next question then, um, how often should a man be having sex?
I love that question. I first got to
Just
make.
so I know, just so like I have
Right.
it wrote down
I
here.
think I think men should try to have sex every day. I think the women should try to have sex every
By
day.
themselves because I
Why
know
not?
myself and loads of women are like, are you insane?
Why not? Well, we're different, but why not? And why not have sex every day? I mean, look, there are certain life is stressful,
Mhm.
and nature has given us this wonderful way of dealing with stress and producing pleasure. Uh, so why not do it every day, even if it's solo? I don't. And so I now what at the opposite extreme, men who don't have sex lose their confidence, and then if they do get into a relationship, they don't have the confidence that men who have sex regularly do.
Well,
We
this
have
was one of the, I'm sorry to cut you off, but that was
sure, sure.
actually another question that had came from one of my male followers was what happens if a man is not having regular sex and they're not masturbating either? Is that a case of use it or lose it?
You just use it or lose it, and the penis atrophies. It will shrink, and the smooth muscle that's responsible for ejaculation for orgasm in men atrophies. You know, if you and I uh, fasted for a month and then we went out to a restaurant, had a 7 course meal, we get sick because the smooth muscle around our esophagus and around our intestines that's necessary for digestion will have atrophied, and the same thing happens with sex over time. And there are well, and I've had clients who, because of their religious beliefs, their partners they get divorced or the partner dies, and because they're religious beliefs, they don't masturbate, and they don't have sex, and then suddenly 5, 6 later, and these guys in their 50s or 60s, they're older men, they meet someone, and then they have ED.
Mhm.
Well, they've lost confidence, but two, they've also had atrophy of the smooth muscles that are responsible for sexual pleasure.
Is there a direct influence then on testosterone levels as well?
It's not direct; it's more direct in women, which is really interesting.
Mm.
So, um,
So, just before you jump into that, so what we're saying is if a man doesn't have regular sex or masturbate, it won't directly lower testosterone levels, to put it bluntly.
the data is limited,
Mm.
but the data shows that men who don't have sex and also don't exercise. So we're talking about
It's
data that
multifactorial.
data that goes back to studies of priests done in the 1950s, 1960s, and early 1970s. You know, people who were celibate and also were not leading active lives that they would suffer the that effect.
Mm.
Uh, on the other hand, there are men taking tea, men similar physical condition taking tea, and some respond to testosterone and others don't. But it's
Mhm.
not like you suddenly take testosterone. You take testosterone and you get erections, or you take testosterone. And by the way, testosterone appears to have no impact on the refractory period in men, but it does appear to have that an influence on women. So um, and I'm a testosterone advocate, and I take testosterone, but I take it because I'm older and I'm interested in maintaining my muscle mass and my
Mhm.
muscle health. It doesn't have any impact on me and my sexual health. But we have men who are taking testosterone. One second, my wife was calling to me. Annie, I'm doing a podcast. Sorry, I apologize for that. Uh, sorry, Annie, I have not fed the animals. I apologize for that. We have horses and chickens. The we have men who are taking testosterone who show recovery of their sexual function and men who don't. And that probably to do with the fact that they differ in receptors. You can give them medication, but if they lack receptors or the receptors of aging, that they're not going to respond to it.
Mm.
But
So it's
things seem different in women, by the way. Go ahead.
yeah, you were going to speak about women, and we often hear that women who are low in testosterone will also have a lower desire to be intimate. But you're saying that's not the same for
Well,
men, like.
Correct. Well, I'm saying, Chemaine, I like to look at outcomes that are objective rather than subjective.
Mm,
So people will say, "Oh, you in men now, you have low T if your testosterone is 300 or less, and you have low energy, you have trouble sleeping, and you have low libido." All those things are subjective, and they're important to ask people about. But the things that are objective are muscles and nocturnal erections. So when I started taking testosterone, which I did about 2 years ago, it was because I'm in this area of sexual health, and I became aware from talking to my friends that it seemed like every guy over age 55 or 60 was taking testosterone, whether they, my perspective, they needed it or not.
mm,
So I asked my advisors, "What do you think?" And my advisors thought that my nocturnal erections would last longer and be harder, and there was no impact on my nocturnal erections because I don't really have ED, but there was a dramatic impact on my health of my muscles. And how did I measure that? Not by I have more energy, I feel stronger. I put a tape measure around my biceps, a tape measure around my pecs, and I could see that that after about 6 to 8 weeks of testosterone,
mm.
I was about 8% stronger, and that's dramatic. And women, women post, my opinion, all postmenopausal women would benefit from taking testosterone.
Mm.
It's for most of my medical career, hormone replacement therapy has been controversial, and now it's accepted that women need estrogen and progesterone, postmenopausal women. But they're missing out on the other hormone, which is testosterone. I mean, a female testosterone goes to zero.
Mm.
So what
So no wonder we have no interest combined with the stress.
exactly?
But and
So I've
it's very hard to get a prescription for testosterone if you're a female
in
because I
Canada,
think doctors
especially.
don't understand it so much.
Well, yeah, they don't. And if my wife goes to a gynecologist, you go to a gynecologist, they'll say, "Oh, you're getting older," or "Get a vibrator." Well, getting a vibrator doesn't increase your libido. Getting
Okay.
a vibrator doesn't make your clitoris more sensitive. So I mean, I've been having now started prescribing testosterone to women. I'm amazed at the impact.
Mm.
Women tell me this is subjective, but almost every woman I prescribe to tells me that they now feel like they're 35 again. Meaning,
Mm.
it isn't like I'm an older woman, and if I get turned on, maybe I'll want to come. It's I want it. I'm looking. I'm now find myself looking. And my wife would say it too. I'm checking. My wife checks me out coming out in and out of the shower right now. That didn't happen for the last 20 years, because why? Because she's actually some. I mean, she's well. I'll quote her again. She says it's not natural. Yeah. Well, so is cooking on a stove not natural. She looks. It's something. The hormone has affected her mind that she there's no longer. And I hear about this again from the women I prescribe testosterone to. They go to bed wanting sex, as opposed to I don't know if I want it. He wants it. What am I going to do? It's an issue in their relationship, as opposed to no, I want it. And another thing I'm seeing in most of the women that I prescribe to is a decrease in the refractory period. That's the time between orgasms. I have one woman I give it to is in her late 70s. She's multi-orgasmic again, and her husband actually complains he can't keep up with her. So I think that the testosterone replacement therapy will become a standard of care for women. Uh,
I
and
hope so, but probably not for a long time. I mean, there is hope at the end of the tunnel.
women need to demand it.
Yeah. Unlike other hormone therapy, bioidentical, we can get our hands on that now. But even people selling that, companies selling that, their hands are tied when it comes to selling testosterone over the counter because for some reason it's deemed dangerous.
Well, it's not like a woman takes testosterone and wakes up with Adolf Hitler mustache the next morning. It's a dose-related effect, and this is one of the problems in men as well too. Doctors with men, they're targeting a number. Well, I don't care about the number. I care about my sexual health and my muscle health and my cardiovascular health, and those things to be tested objectively.
Mm.
And so when it comes to testosterone therapy in women, heck, if you get pimples or you get some facial hair, well, then it's up. What do you want to do? Do you want to keep taking it, or do you want to cut back on the dose? It's not like these effects are not permanent.
Mm. And there's the consideration of estrogen and inflammation and nutrition, as we know,
Sure.
which brings me to my next question. With men's erections and health, and I'm trying to kind of put them both under the same umbrella. where does nutrition and alcohol come into this? Like, surely there is, depending on your choices, there is some impact there.
I mean, nutrition is hard to quantify. I mean, obviously, nutrition has an impact on someone's lipoproteins. It has an impact on someone developing atherosclerosis. The effects of alcohol are much easier to demonstrate, and I can do it. We can do that with just our tech ray, and we can do it with nocturnals. I know that if I drink heavily, which I do sometimes, my nocturnals will go down in number, they'll go down in strength, and they'll go down in duration. Now, I'm not an alcoholic, but if that persisted, it would have if I drank chronically, heavily, it would have an impact upon the health of my penis and the health of my heart. And I assume the same thing is true for women.
What about men who would say, "Well, I don't drink heavily, but I have one or two drinks every Friday and Saturday night."
I hope they're having sex afterwards.
Mm.
So that's one thing. One of the things, the benefits of a good cock ring is that, and I've experienced this myself, as many of our customers. You can drink a little bit more, and with the ring, you can perform sexually.
Mm.
I recognize that there's a trend that both in Canada and the United States and internationally, there's a push to get men to not, like us all, to not drink at all. Um, I'm not in that camp. I think that alcoholism is dangerous. If people are drinking to the point where it impacts their heart health, their liver health, their relationships, their ability to work, that's profound. But on the other hand, I recognize that alcohol is a pleasure,
Mm.
and we're never, it was not. I don't see it going away.
It
And
won't. It's
yeah.
too big. It's too much of a money maker. I see the push too, and the different studies and the influencers and everyone speaking about it now on YouTube. But regardless of the pleasure aspect and the economic aspect, we would be naive to not mention that alcohol does play a part in relationships as well. And most women will agree that if they've had a very stressful week, if their husband wants to be intimate, they know they need to have a drink or two to relax, to allow that to happen. It's more layered than people think
Yeah,
when we're discussing alcohol.
and it's true for women as well too. I'm, uh, most, alcohol is used by women as a mood shifter as well,
Mhm.
and or to get into, yeah, well, as a mood shifter
It's
basically.
to push down that stress, which is unfortunate, but this is society now.
But it's also a pleasure. And so we
Yeah.
talk about, the um, intoxicants. Again, people just, one would hope, wish, and it doesn't work out, that people would have the self-discipline to distinguish between use and abuse when it comes to drugs and alcohol. Unfortunately, many people don't.
They
Many
don't.
people do. Many people do. If I look at the successful relationships that I know, the couples, by measuring success by the years of marriage, if you will, most of these people drink.
Hmm. Yeah.
I don't think they don't drink heavily, but they drink with control. They drink for pleasure, and for stress relief, as opposed to, I had a bad day and I'm getting really fucked up. I mean, I don't, and I would count myself, fortunately, as one of those people. Unfortunately, I do know people. You and I both know people, I'm certain, who don't have that self discipline.
Yeah, it's true. And I had heard you mention in another podcast, and I just want to bring this up, a Japanese study that was done on men who completely eliminated alcohol, and they did see improvements in erection. Now, we're not saying this is relevant for everyone, but it's definitely something to be aware of. If you are a heavy drinker and there are issues in the bedroom, maybe you could start reducing the alcohol.
Totally agree, completely agree with you. And there's a big difference between having a beer or two and having a six or a case. And a big difference between having a glass or two of wine and having two bottles of wine. It's, et cetera, et cetera. It's a dose related phenomena. And if men have erectile dysfunction, they they need to figure it out. And again, the tech data really makes it really, really obvious it hasn't made it to me. Actually, and it's impacted me as well too. I drink less at night because I've seen the impact upon my nocturnal erections.
Mhm.
But without the data, it wouldn't have been as obvious to me, and I wouldn't have been as motivated.
Yeah. So we've only got a few minutes left, so I'm going to try squeeze in two
Sure,
questions if that's okay with
of
you.
course.
So one that actually wasn't on my list, but it popped into my head when we were discussing men using testosterone. So from what I got from you there was if you are a man using testosterone, really the markers you're looking at is muscle growth and potentially strength, not necessarily length and duration of erection. If a
Well,
man,
the nocturnals. It is important to the two. One is not just sex, actual measuring your performance during sex because that's influenced by your partners or alcohol or drugs or whatever. But measuring nocturnal erections, duration, strength, the number, that's the objective measure of the impact of testosterone. That and muscles.
how you didn't mention how many erections ideally should a man have during the night?
Well, that's been very interesting as well too, because it should be the norm we're seeing now is 3+.
Mhm.
The thinking before was that that 5 is normal, and then it goes down to 4, 3, 2, and and ends. But now with our data is actually showing that even as men get older, the number of nocturnal erections remains the same until something catastrophic happens. Diabetes gets worse, hypertension gets worse, have a heart attack, have a stroke, alcohol use, and that's actually changing the conventional wisdom. So why does the number of nocturnals, which is 3+, stay the same? It's and whereas the incidence of diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, is increasing with age. We're not certain exactly, but my suspicion is that even though the rate of erectile dysfunction is going up 10% per decade, the number of nocturnals remain the same. It's because we're getting venous leak. What we're not assessing objectively is the fact that when men try to have sex, as they get older, they're having venous leak, and they need to put a ring on it. Up, and to circle around to women need to put a ring on it. Let's talk about vibrators for a moment. In my lifetime, vibrator has been mainstreamed. My mother's vibrator was hidden away in the bottom dresser drawer in a supply closet. I don't know. And back in the 70s or 80s, when '80s and vibrators became popular, at first there was a certain shame. Oh, you got to come
I
during
think there
penetrative sex.
still is. It's still a
Too.
very taboo topic.
I don't. Well,
In
maybe.
in my circle
I
for
accept it.
sure.
Okay, I'll accept that. But I don't know anyone who doesn't use have a vibrator. So it's been normalized to some degree. You're right. For some, there's still a sense of shame, but
Or
yeah,
embarrassment, like women will flush, even if you mention masturbating or orgasm, a woman will get rosy cheeks. It'll be,
yeah, that's true. I don't.
yeah.
There's still that Victorian thing going on. Even my wife is quite kinky. Still does that. That's one of them. And but for men, cock rings are just they remain the sort of fetish thing. They're for straight gay guys, or they're for guys who are into fetish. And all men, especially all aging men, will benefit from a cock ring. And if I think it's going to be mainstream, it's going to come about because women embrace it. If guy's embarrassed to put a cock ring on, it ain't going to happen. If a woman buys a cock ring for her guy, it'll happen.
Mm.
Women, I mean, the sex toy industry basically knows that if a man buys a sex toy, it might get used once or twice. If a woman buys a sex toy, it gets used as often as she wants it to be used.
Well, yeah, women in that aspect, in the bedroom, the woman does rule the roost, and it's almost a case of nowadays between kids, stress, careers, and everything. If a man gets laid, he's pretty much lucky. It's even happening. This again, I'm only speaking from my circle and what I know, but this seems to be the case. And even
Well,
at that, if he does get lucky to a woman, that's just another chore on her list for that week.
well, that's unfortunate because women, and that is a big problem
Mm.
in
Oh, it
in
is.
relationships
Yeah.
because both people. It's important to both people that they have orgasms.
I wanted you to mention before I let you go. Remember at the start of the call, you mentioned Botox for erections.
Yes,
I just found that really interesting. Can you go back into that?
sure. Well, Botox is being used to increase the length of penises, and can. I mean, a man increase the length of his penis by 3/4 inch to an inch. Why this is important to guys? It's just, I don't think it's important to women at all, but it's important to guys. Maybe it's important to girls in high school or college. I don't think it's important afterwards. But the question is whether Botox can also make a man harder, and that is an unknown. So there's a researcher at Mayo Clinic who's going to be studying that this year. There's similar studies going on about penis pumps, shockwave therapy, PD5 medications. I mean, so here's something about PD5 medications for your male and female listeners. What do men do to improve their sexual performance because they have ED? They get Cialis or Viagra or some other pill of the same sort. Well, those pills, two things. One, in the original Viagra paper, there were 7 papers. 2 of them showed no more benefit than placebo. And the paper that showed the most benefit was in men who had recovering from prostate surgery. Well, this isn't a great drug, but because of the influence of pharma and advertising money, it's really popular. And I speak to women who still think guy takes a pill, he gets a hard on. That ain't happening. It just puts more blood in, but stimulation is still required. There's a paper that's going to come out, be published this year, showing that a cock ring is just as effective, our cock ring, is just as effective as 10 milligrams of Cialis. And it's not a pill. It's not a pharmacological solution. Why? Because venous leak is a problem that many men have. They don't need to get blood in. They need to keep the blood in.
Yeah. Well, I had a list of questions. We got through as many as we could in our time. So maybe we'll get you back on in a few weeks to go through the rest if you're
I
free.
love it. Sure. Anytime.
Awesome.
And I'd like to talk more about the Clitique, the device we're coming out with for women for clitoral health, and
absolutely, yeah. Let's plan it for February, March. Everyone, this was our fault because we got into a ramble before we even started recording, and we wasted some time.
I apologize for that.
Oh, it was my fault too. You know, as Irish, we like to talk. So before I let you go, and we'll arrange to have you back on in a couple of weeks, where can people find out more about you and the ring, shall we call it?
Sure. You go to MyFirmTech, MyFirmTech, myfirmtech.com. If you join, you don't have to buy anything. If you join our subscriber list, you will get information about cutting edge information about sexual health. And it's not just about selling stuff to you. It's going to be about educating people.
Yeah, I see you have a science tab there and some articles, which is really kind of the name of the game. Educate people so that they can take this action and responsibility onto their own shoulders.
And people can reach me directly at Elliot, Elliot, at myfirmtech.com. I'm happy to speak to people. I'm passionate about sexual health.
Yeah, I know a few of my wife's husbands have some questions as well. So I'll put all the links below. Thanks for your time, Dr. Justin. It actually has been very enlightening for me too. So we'll have you back on in a few weeks and we'll cover everything else.
I look forward to it. Thank you.
Including that story you were telling me about the military men. We need to discover that too.
I'll do that as well.
Okay. Thanks for your time.